So welcome back, and hello if you are new, guys. I hope that everyone is getting in the festive mood. I feel like I'm at last starting to feel a little bit festive, just because this year's been so weird, really. So I'm sure that this next album will come as no surprise to you guys, but it's the Black Dahlia Murder and Verminous. So as much as I am a self-professed Black Dahlia massive fan, I didn't like this album when I first listened to it. But the initial reaction I had was, I want kind of Nightbringers Part 2. And then when we got Verminous, it was a lot slower. It was a lot more kind of deliberate. There was more emphasis on black metal and experimentation. And at first I was kind of like, this isn't what I want. But when I got my head round the fact that this was a bit slower, a bit more groove oriented, and that the band were trying to do something different, I absolutely love this record now. I think that the overall sound of this record is probably the Black Dahlia Murder's most dynamic. What I really like about Verminous is I think that Brandon really has found his voice and is also he's not afraid to show it. On the record, and some of my favourite moments are his solos, and he just has a great personality with them as well. The Black Dahlia Murder, for me, are without a doubt one of the best modern death metal bands out there, and with Verminous I think they've just kind of proved this all over again, and you know, I'm always going to be excited to see where they go next, and I cannot wait to tune into their Yule 'Em All next week. Oh look, it's another death metal band, how surprising. So, Undeath are an absolutely fantastic band, and I think that on their first release with Prosthetic Records, they have moved mountains. And I think that despite them being quite an underground sort of band at the minute, they really do have the scope to get big, like really, really big. And the thing I've loved about Undeath is they combine that sort of soul and essence of extreme metal, but like early 90s extreme metal, but with the delivery of the more kind of tuned up. I mean, I always use Cannibal Corpse as a bit of an example. So, you know, they've got the soul of the first 4 Cannibal Corpse records, but then the delivery of like Kill, Torture, Skeletal Domain, Evisceration Plague, that kind of vibe. There's not many death metal bands that I can kind of say that you kind of start screaming out the choruses of the songs and actually remember them as well, which I think is a really important thing. Now I can't get enough of them. Undeath are also the nicest people, so I cannot say enough great things about this record, and I cannot wait to see it performed live when the world gets back to normal. So, if you ever wondered what the UK's answer to a combination of Voivod and Gorguts might be, then welcome Cryptic Shift. Cryptic Shift are another band that I've discovered this year. Really, really amazing stuff. Like, from the first moment you put the record on, it opens with a 24-minute song, Moonbell Immolator, which I thought was amazing, and quite a ballsy move, really, if you think about it, because in a day where, you know, people's attention span is usually like a song or a playlist, that's really demanding a lot from your audience. But I think that the audience who listen to Cryptic Shift are kind of similar people who would listen to, like, I don't know, Oranzi Pazuzu or Imperial Triumphant, you know, people like that. They've just announced a tour with Bedsore as well, which is going to be absolutely massive. So to be able to see these guys live when all of this kind of quietens down is going to be amazing. So if you haven't listened to Cryptic Shift before, definitely give them a go. I've been a fan of Intronaut for years, and their previous album, The Direction of Last Things, was another favourite of mine when it was released about 5 years ago. But that sort of time away that they've had, you know, 5 years between an album, has allowed Intronaut, I think, to get even better in delivering fluid existential inversions. There's as much kind of Gorguts as there is King Crimson and Yes on this record, And the thing that I love the most about this album is there's just so many of the how the fuck did we get here moments, but it's so effortless in their songwriting and the dynamics and all that sort of stuff that you just you go with it, and you just kind of like go with this weird acid trip flow, and I love that. Not to mention that this is also Alex Rudinger's first outing with the band, and it was mixed by Kurt Ballou, so when you need it to, you know, those bits really do kind of like pack a bit more of a punch, but then you can hear all of the intricacies, especially I think on the drums and the guitar. But the thing is I've been listening to this since probably about January, and I'm still finding things out that I'd never heard before. Now, this is another new release that I had never heard of, a new band that I wasn't familiar with, and I think that's a real kind of big theme for me this year, for my albums of the year, is finding stuff that I've not really heard before. I have to thank my good friend Arne for that, because his recommendation was just spot on. So this band is formed of Robert Anderson out of the ashes of Morbus Chron, who had their final album was also called Sweven, and this record again brings me to that weird lucid dreamscape of escapism and this kind of weird perennial looking into the eyes of death and the abyss. And I know that sounds very doom and gloom, but for me it's very kind of reverential, and you know it's quite philosophical in a way. And in terms of sound, you could say that they probably sound a bit like Tribulation mixed with Horrendous and Cynic as well. So they have that kind of fluidity that Cynic have, but then they also have that sort of slight meandering that Tribulation have, and the high-pitched vocals and really kind of great guitar work that Horrendous have. So combine that all together and you get something really, really special on the Eternal Resonance. I always love stuff that's like an onion, you know, to paraphrase Shrek.
No! Layers! Onions have layers. Ogres have layers. Onions have layers. You get it.
It's almost meditative in its kind of performance and the way that I listen to it, for sure. And for me, there is absolutely nothing else like it out this year. It's an absolute masterpiece. So that's your lot for this week. I've got 2 more videos of my albums of the year, and then that's pretty much it for 2020. So let me know what you think of this week's picks, and I can't wait to see you for hopefully next week's picks. So thanks ever so much for watching. If you could hit that like and subscribe button, if you enjoyed this, if you discovered some new bands, please do let me know. And let me know even more about your albums of the year. I always love to hear about them. So take care, my friends, and I will see you next week for part 3.